And joining us now on our Book Talk segment on Talk Across America, great to welcome both authors of a very interesting book. It kind of came out of another project they did together. It's called The Ambition Decisions, What Women Know About Work, Family, and the Path to Building a Life. We're joined today by Hana Schank and Elizabeth Wallace, and they join us both by telephone today. And ladies, good to have you. How are you?
We're great.
Good, thank you.
Am I pronouncing your name right, Hana? Is it Schank?
You are.
Okay.
Bonus points.
Great, yeah. It has a C in there, so I wasn't sure if it was Schank or Skank, but Schank is it. Good to talk with you both. As I said, this kind of came out. I had a chance to read through the book, by the way. Very interesting book, but it kind of came out of an article both of you did for Atlantic, the magazine, right, last year. You interviewed a bunch of fellow classmates at Northwestern University, women, about their lives and how it's changed. So talk first of all how that project came about and then how you put it into a book.
Sure. So this project really started as a midlife crisis, as all good things do. We both were in our early 40s, and sort of reflecting on where we were in our careers, and found ourselves feeling stuck in our careers, in our parenting, in our marriages, just feeling like everything was very difficult, and much harder than, we were friends from college, and much harder than we had ever anticipated. And so we wondered whether that was us, was this just like we couldn't hack it, or if other people were having the same kinds of challenges. So we decided to connect with some of our friends from college and ask them. And that was the start of this project.
And I should say, you both went to Northwestern, right? The same year?
Yes,
we did, yeah.
So you knew each other in college at the time. And how did you get in touch with the other classmates? Had you kept in touch over the years, or how did you do that?
We had kept in touch with a small group, maybe 3 or 4, whom we would have email threads with, and we would see for dinner. Maybe we would have group dinners maybe once a year. You know how it goes. And then we started by reaching out to them and asking them some of the questions that we had asked each other in trying to solve some of the questions that had arisen in this midlife crisis about what happened to our previously ambitious, high achieving careers. Mm-hmm. What happened exactly? Where did things kind of land? And so we started asking them those questions, and those interviews were very interesting. And so we started expanding to ask more friends from the same group. And we ended up interviewing all 43 members of our graduating class, and we found most of them through social media, and some we had to Encyclopedia Brown reporter out a little bit more, but mostly through social media, yeah.
I remember Encyclopedia Brown, so we must be around the same age.
Yeah, okay, you remember those books then.
Sure,
Thank you.
sure.
I was like, I'm dating myself a little bit there.
And again, the theme of the book is obviously, as the title states, ambition decisions, not necessarily just men and women, but this is geared toward women, obviously, their ambitions, but obviously going along with that is the question of a lot of women have, of course, should they do the career, should they do the marriage, should they do both? Children involved, so a lot more to it, obviously, than men have to decide about, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we interviewed only women for this book, but and the primary goal was to write specifically about women's lives, but women's lives are inextricably linked with the men that they choose to partner with. So one of the things that we found was that the women who had the biggest careers tended to be partnered with men who stayed at home, mm-hmm. If they were married, supporting them on the home front.
For more of the women that you interviewed, and just reading through the book, you talked to a lot of them that have had successful careers in different fields. But were there any that just decided, "Oh, I'd like to just stay home and raise the children, and maybe do some side work on the side, not necessarily full time, but that just decided to go that route"?
There were about a quarter of the women that we interviewed fell into this second path. So we identified the optouters who who had careers, and some careers they were very passionate about, but that after their first or second or more children, did decide that it was more important to them to be primary parents as their full-time job rather than their full-time paying career. And that has been a more fixed decision for some than for others, but some of them did that for a couple of years and then got back into working part-time or flexible jobs, and some of them did that for 14 years and are now trying to reenter the workforce now that their children are approaching college age themselves and need less hands-on parenting.
Yeah, that's a big part of the book from what I gathered out of reading it, that they may have raised the children and decided to go back to work, and that's a whole other issue now, going back into the workforce at a later age. I mean, that's different challenges, isn't it?
It is, and we found that, of course, what you do while you are out of the workforce it does a lot to predict how easy it is to reenter. So, of course, now with technology, it's much easier to participate in the gig economy and take on freelance work, and the women who did that, even if they did it sporadically, had a much easier time getting back into the workforce once they were in their 40s. The other thing that we found is that 40 is really not the end of the line for most people, and in fact, many of our friends took the opportunity once they had fewer demands at home to really start to drive harder on their careers, to do things that they might have felt like before they just couldn't figure out a way to make a hard driving career work in their lives, and then suddenly were able to take on that challenge. And then the other piece of that is that for some of our friends who had big careers, once they got to 40, thought, you know what, I did that, and now I want to do something else.
Mm-hmm. Anything that, and ask both of you again, Hana Schank and Elizabeth Wallace, our guests, The Ambition Decisions is the name of the book, that kind of surprised you when you took this project on? I know it started as a kind of a magazine piece, and then you turned it into this book where you kind of give your own thoughts after these interviews, but anything that kind of surprised you from these interviews you didn't expect?
Well, one thing that we found was that of all the women who had children, 100% of them made the pediatrician appointments for their children, regardless of what track of work life they were in, regardless of whether they were a high achiever, opt-outer, or flex lifer. And the reason we found that was that because there are certain elements of parenting, motherhood, that made these women feel inherently and essentially like a mother. And one of those was overseeing logistical control over their child's health and their child's health care.
Yeah. Did you get the impression, and I guess both of you again, that from the majority of women you talked to, you said 43,
Did I
that
lose you?
Most of them were satisfied with their decisions? Anybody say, well, I regret it? Or what was the percentage there that if you took that kind of grade of how they thought about what they did?
Well, when you call somebody up after 20 years and ask how their life is, they don't typically want to tell you, like, oh, I'm really unhappy with all of my choices that I made. So our sample might be a little bit biased in that way, but for the most part, we found that the people who were the most satisfied with their choices were the high achievers, which isn't to say that they were necessarily the happiest, but they seemed to be the least conflicted. They had typically chosen a career path, stuck with it, often with the same company for over a decade. There are people who are getting a lot of pats on the back at work, that they're doing a great job, feeling very confident in their career, and especially those who are partnered with stay-at-home dads seem to feel like that part of their lives is also taken care of. Happy is hard to say, but we certainly didn't have anybody who was like, I did it all wrong.
Right, yeah. I should say both of you ladies have successful careers in media yourself, so you've wrestled with this yourself in your own lives, I imagine, these thoughts, right?
We have, and we had this whole thing came about because we had to sort of self pivot our careers. My career in magazines kind of took a left turn when magazines kind of sort of started to go down the drain,
right.
and I had to rethink things as a freelancer. And Hana's career shifted too from a technologist. Well, I don't speak for you, but it did.
I was running a company for a period of time in technology, but also it wasn't going the direction that I wanted. I was doing the same thing 10 years in that I'd been doing 5 years in, and it was I was looking to do something else.
Right. Well, it's a great book. It's called The Ambition Decisions, What Women Know About Work, Family, and the Path to Building a Life. And we've been talking today with Hana Schank and Elizabeth Wallace. And give out a website. People, I'm sure, want to get more information about the book. We'll have a link on our page as well. But do you have a website?
You can refer people to the Viking Penguin Random House website, and they can get information at their favorite bookseller.
Great. Well, Hana and Elizabeth, pleasure talking to you. Glad we could talk to you today, and hopefully we'll do it again. But thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Dad.
you.
Have a great afternoon.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.